Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are now at episode 10 of Crunch Time Crossover. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope you guys are enjoying the content, and I also hope you guys are checking out all the other podcasts that are going on Primo Media's page. A lot of really good stuff out there, especially with Finta Football's soccer podcast, Real Talk. Just a lot of other cool things coming up, so definitely make sure to check all of those podcasts stuff, everything out. So thank you for that. Getting into the basketball for this week, I think this time around season is the time of season where teams really start buckling down, especially after All-Star break. I would say kind of successful All-Star break. It definitely wasn't too bad, but I think for the players, this is where things definitely start to pick up. I think at this point in the season, the top teams are clearly more solidified than the rest of the team. Most of these teams, as trade deadline comes up, already have their rotations filled. They have their times already set up with when who's going to be in like what position, as far as, like I said, like late rotations, their star players, whether they're playing or sitting out, is already set up. So it's going to be really interesting to see how teams adjust to the remaining portion of the season. I think there's maybe a little under 30 games left until we hit that postseason stretch of games. So I think that's going to be some good basketball. Again, last year with the pandemic, the bubble, we had some of the, at least in my opinion, from what I've seen, the most competitive basketball, especially with that play-in tournament that happened, and knowing that the league is going to be doing that this year is going to be, again, I think really good for the sport. Looking at the Eastern Conference again, Philly, even though they are the number one seed, they will be without Joel Embiid for the next couple weeks. I think they're anticipating 2 to 3 weeks, but they did say it was a bone bruise. So I know that's going to be something that's going to be a little bit on the trickier side for them to get back. Very unfortunate, especially after Embiid was in the middle of his, MVP run for season. But I definitely think if he gets back, especially if there's over like 10, 15 games to play, he's going to be able to keep that case for MVP, or at least potentially the front runner to win that. They're at 28-13 with the Nets as well at number 2. After the Blake Griffin trade, I think that put Brooklyn in favors, or in most people's favors, to win out the East. I think they're going to be, looking at that lineup with everybody healthy, you have a team that can score at just about will. I think there is a lot of chemistry there with Blake and DeAndre, especially from playing with each other in LA with Lob City. So I think they're going to play pretty well. I don't think they're going to really intrude on each other's playmaking. Blake Griffin is definitely not the player he was when he was in LA. So it's going to be interesting to watch a player like that adjust his game, not being able to do what, he's been pretty much known for in the league. But I know if he wants to win, he's definitely going to make those adjustments. Even though they're still without Kevin Durant, and I know Kyrie Irving's missing out on the game that they're playing tonight, James Harden is really making a case for an MVP run this year. I know it's definitely been overshadowed by the play from Joel Embiid, and obviously most people's, I would say, favorite to win MVP, LeBron James. But just the fact that he had a 40-point triple-double last night. I think the other night there was a total of like 6 triple-doubles overall in the entire, for that day of basketball. But for Harden to be doing that, yet alone with 2 superstars, he's making that case. And I think it's going to be really interesting with Joel Embiid gone, like I said, with Harden being my potential front runner and LeBron James, they might be able to really separate themselves in that run, depending on how long Joel Embiid gets back. Hoping he's gone for less than 2 to 3 weeks and that bone bruise isn't too serious, but because I think basketball is definitely better when he plays, especially for Philadelphia. Milwaukee at the 3rd in the East, they've definitely re-upped. They did trade for PJ Tucker, and I do think that that's a really big improvement on their end. Also, they didn't really lose too much for him. I think DJ Augustine was the only name that I recognized part of that trade, and I think maybe a 2nd-round draft pick. But again, I've spoke on PJ Tucker, really good 3-and-D player. Definitely, again, helps out Giannis. That's, I was saying, a kind of a type guard that guards 1 through 5, and it's kind of hard to find players that are so willing to do that side of the ball. And again, doesn't need the ball in his hands to score. Really vocal. I think being me playing basketball myself, I think something that I like doing is being vocal. You can definitely dictate a lot of tempo from that kind of style of play, just getting people involved and like making your presence known. And I think he definitely does that. And when you're kind of dog like PJ Tucker is, you really do impede on people's games, so that definitely, again, if I'm being honest, I'm definitely pretty relieved to hear that Milwaukee did that. I think that definitely helps their postseason runs. And then again, topic conversation, Miami's won the last 10 out of their 11. Butler coming back after COVID has just been obviously what Miami needed. They're definitely a team that I haven't heard a lot of conversation as far as making any offseason moves. And I know, or at least in my opinion, with the trade deadline coming up, I think the teams that don't make any moves are going to put themselves at not the best advantage going into the postseason, just with the talent that's out there right now, especially specifically in that top 4 in the Eastern Conference. You're going to need something to really solidify yourself to stay in that 1 through 4 and not have to get pushed down to that play-in for seeds 7 through 10. So glad to see him winning. That's a winning culture in Miami, and I'm definitely a Jimmy Butler fan. So hopefully, if they don't do anything before the trade deadline, hopefully they can put together another good postseason run that they did in the bubble. Hornets are above 500. LaMelo's playing very well. Still leading rookies right now. I think that Airbnb nickname is a really good nickname, and I hope they continue to rock with it because I do think that's pretty fly. Miles Bridges is nice. I think that team is I think the Hornets are a good example of a young team that doesn't have any ego. I think when you look at that roster, not a lot of older players on that team, no real superstar. I mean, I think you can see, other than the obvious names, who's the focal point of that team. But I think when you have players that are all around the same age, that feel the same way, can communicate with the same way to each other, I think it makes playing really easily. So I think that's probably due to a lot of the Hornets' success. And, I think Michael Jordan for the longest time was definitely criticized as being one of the worst GMs in basketball with how bad the Hornets have been. And, it's looking like he's put together a pretty good unit in Charlotte. So I'm excited to see their play just this year, but again, over the next couple of years. The lower half of the East, I mean, we have, and to speak on the Hornets again, Hornets with 20 wins, Atlanta at 20 wins, Boston has 20 wins, and then the Knicks are at 20 wins. That's your 5 through 8 right there. And I think that tournament playing is going to be good, allowing teams. The Bulls are at 18 and 21, and as of right now, Indiana at 17 and 22. I think the Pacers are going to kind of get out of that, especially with Karis LeVert coming back. He's definitely a really good role player, and I'm glad to see that he was able to make his debut the other day. So we'll see what happens. Again, I'm glad that the East is not as much as a laughingstock as it has been, at least in the past couple of years, because it has been really bad in the East. I think while LeBron was in Cleveland and in Miami, I think you kind of had your shoe out for the last, or at least the top 2-3 teams. But I think this has been a more competitive season, and as a basketball fan, I'm never upset about that. So yeah, looking forward to it. Moving over to the Western Conference, I'm impressed. Utah only 10 losses after the All-Star after the All-Star break is really impressive. I think the disrespect that Donovan and Rudy Gobert received in the All-Star draft is fuel, because that would piss me off, to be the best team in the league and to have both of those players get drafted last. That's pretty, regardless of LeBron's comment, that would piss me off too. So I'm glad that was fuel. I don't know what it's going to take for them to be considered serious. I do think that they're really good, and I think they're not a team no one wants to face in the postseason, but I'm just unsure of what it's going to take for them to be considered a real contender for the chip. At least I don't think they get spoken in the same space as like the Lakers get spoken about, and like the Nets, and even the Clippers as of right now. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. I think they're not going to be a team that makes a lot of moves before the trade deadline either. So I think we're going to see a pretty similar Utah team going into the postseason. The Lakers, Suns have moved to the second in the West as well at 26 and 12. I think talking about an MVP run, one of the more silent MVP conversations as well, we should put Chris Paul in that conversation too. I think I think Devin Booker's a great player, but I think the reason why Chris Paul should be in that conversation is what he's been able to do with that kind of team and put them in the position that they're in to win. I mean, they're 26-12. I think that makes them, they're one win below the Lakers, but the Lakers do have another loss, so they're technically above them. But man, doing a lot of really good things. DeAndre Ayton seems to be really panning out as they hoped. And again, Chris Paul just showing that he's probably one of the best leaders in the game. Taking another team to make another postseason run is beyond impressive. So shout out Chris Paul going to Phoenix. Always been a CP3 fan. With the Lakers being the third in the West and being without Anthony Davis is going to be quite troublesome as from already what it's seen. I know LeBron did make a comment about them being comfortable and saying that the team that they have is enough to win. But they've definitely had conversations about whether or not they end up with potentially Andre Drummond. I know there's been conversation about JaVale McGee. I think recently I heard a conversation about maybe sending a package to Indiana for a Miles Turner. So not too sure what's going to happen. They do need to make, do think they need to make an upgrade. I think the biggest conversation is just Marc Gasol hasn't been really that type of player that they wanted him to be at that center position. So again, I think they have enough talent on the board to make things happen. So if they do, again, another shoe-in, still one of the best teams in the league. And like I said, LeBron is still on a MVP type of year. So the team right below them, as expected, the other LA team, the Clippers are actually number one in the league for field goal and 3-point field goal percentage. But I feel like they've had a pretty quiet season. Paul George started off pretty strong and so did Kawhi Leonard. But from then on, I think after the first 10, 15 games, not a lot of conversation, definitely winning some good games here and there. But like I said, I think Kawhi Leonard's definitely a postseason player. So as long as they make it to the postseason, we're going to see Kawhi ball out. And again, as much as I'm a Paul George fan, I think he needs to pick it up because I think that contract he got when he signed it was pretty big in my opinion. So, you just never want to see that much money go out with not a lot of production in my opinion. Going down the list, fifth seed, Denver Nuggets at 24-16. Watching Jokic play, I definitely think he's easily one of the most skilled big men to probably ever play the game. They have Jamal Murray, who's playing well. And again, one of the younger players on that team, Michael Porter Jr., just coming off a 28-13 game, and which was a dub, but he's averaged almost 20 points in his last 4 games. Keep your eye out for Michael Porter Jr. Definitely gonna, over the next couple years, is going to be filling that role, being one of the best, potentially top 5 small forwards in the league. He's got that similar Kevin Durant style build, tall, 3-guard, strong body, really good basketball IQ. He's actually really fun to watch play. And it's good to see him get some good touches in Denver, especially on a team that could use that type of play from a wing position. So, and again, when you have arguably the best center in the league in Nikola Jokic, depending on who you're asking, only good things can come from that. So glad to see him getting his touches and getting his time. The bottom half of the West is looking pretty the same. Portland's right under them, but I do know they're getting CJ McCollum back, so I know that's going to help their playoff chances. I think Portland's going to be best to try to avoid the play-in situation from seed 7 to 10. So I don't imagine them staying that low at 6, especially when CJ comes back from having potentially one of the best seasons he's had his entire career. San Antonio at 7. San Antonio and Dallas both at 21-16 at San Antonio and 21-18 for Dallas. And then you have Golden State at 9 and Memphis at 10. That would be your play-in. Grizzlies in the play-in again would be fun to watch. I think everyone after last season is definitely a Ja Morant fan, so everyone's going to be excited to see him play some more. It's funny. I think I heard on NBA TNT they were asking if the Warriors should start tanking this season, and they are 21-20. While on the other conference, the Knicks are 20-21, and it seems like it's the best record they've had in the last couple of years. So that's just how conversations go. I mean, with Golden State, you have arguably one of the best shooters to ever play the game. So they're going to kind of get those types of conversations when the record's not that very good. But yeah, the rest of the West is looking like it should. I am hoping Minnesota reaches that 10-game win column here soon because they're sitting at 9-31. So, we're pulling for them. The Rockets are coming off like a 17 losing game streak. I definitely don't see Victor Oladipo staying very long. So, and that's a very prominent 2-guard to get moved around as well too. I think before the trade deadline, both conferences have a lot of potential trade value. And I've mentioned a couple of them, but a couple other names from the East that have been mentioned about getting moved. Aaron Gordon, I think there's been conversation about him maybe ending up in Denver, somewhere on the West, which would be really interesting. I think he definitely makes a team a lot better. Andre Drummond, again, still in the conversation for getting moved around. I don't know. I think he's worth a lot, but I don't know who's going to give up that much for him. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Cavs do. I think it would be in their best interest to get rid at least of one of the 5 centers that they have on their roster for sure. Again, I'm a Boston fan. I think Kemba's great, but I do think he's good trade value. I did see a trade going along the lines of maybe Kemba and a couple other options for Nikola Vucevic to fill that center position. And I think that would completely change the Eastern Conference as far as Boston's chances of making a title run for sure. And then I know in Chicago, they've also mentioned potentially Zach LaVine and Lauri Markkanen testing the trade market as well too. So, a lot of talent. I think all these players make teams better, especially if it's for the right price. I've always been a fan of Aaron Gordon, and I think I would like to see him play for a team that's actually competing. I do know that Orlando did make the bubble last season, but they had to face the Bucks in the first round, and that was I need to look for a broom because that's pretty much what that first round was like. In the West, though, the West has a lot of trade value too. I did mention Victor Oladipo potentially getting moved around. I think he's a good 2-guard who's probably worth a lot. It's just like I said, who's willing to give up what he's worth. And I did hear Golden State inquired about him, but I think they said Houston's asking price was too high. And that's definitely something to keep a lot of teams away from some value is a really high asking price. I know San Antonio and LaMarcus Aldridge parted ways, and I think, he's always been a good power forward, but I think after he went to San Antonio, that was the beginning of the decline of his career. I think he's had a really quiet couple years. I know before he left, when he was in Portland, when they had Brandon Roy and Greg Oden, that was almost like a 60 win team, so one of the better teams in the league at that time. I don't know. I'm sure Dame would like to team up with him again, and I think he would be really good in Portland as well, and I think he would definitely help their chances out. I guess I just don't see a lot of want coming out of people to want LaMarcus Aldridge, and I think that's a shame because, maybe not a 20-10 guy, but if you can give me 15-8 consistently and not need the ball too much, I'm definitely going to pick you up. So, depending on the right team, I think he definitely makes a huge impact. There's been lots of Lonzo Ball talks getting traded, and I know there's been a lot of teams that have been mentioned in that mix. I think early on in the conversation, they had mentioned the Clippers being a part of that. I think I saw Boston getting involved in the mix. I just recently heard him getting involved in a New York situation. So I think that'll be fun to play out. I think ultimately, whether you want to say it or not, I want to see him play with LaMelo. I don't think it's going to happen in Charlotte. So it'll be interesting to see where that type of play style comes from. But I think Lonzo's had a better season. I think he's hit more threes than like Trae Young and like Luka this year. So he's definitely picked it up as far as his outside shooting goes. And I think that was the main topic of conversation when he was starting in the league, was just no viable jump shot whatsoever. And he's definitely knocking down consistent shots. Again, he reminds me of like a Rajon Rondo, just a really affects a lot of the ball, but just has a hard time scoring sometimes, has a hard time finding his spots. And I think especially in this league, it's a league oriented around finding where you fit and finding your role and finding where you score, and I think that's hard in this league when it's such a fast league. It's hard to find your positions in a flash. So it'll be interesting. I'm definitely a Lonzo fan. I don't think the Pelicans are going to make too many moves. I mean, they're just about, they're one game out of that playoff play-in. They're actually the 11th seed at 17-23, so could make a run for it. I would be excited to see New Orleans play, but again, I think if they do, I don't think they're going to be winning more than 2 games, depending on their matchup. But yeah, some good basketball. Again, postseason's coming up. I'm still casting in my ballot for the Lakers winning the chip. I like the Brooklyn Nets chance, and I think a Lakers Nets finals is going to be one of the best finals we had. I think it's going to be fun watching LeBron and KD square up in that kind of space. Also, with the potential chance of there being fans available in that finals, depending on how far along things get, might change the conversation. But I don't know if the league is going to go to that far. The league might even do another bubble scenario when postseason hits. So that's probably still something that they're in discussions about. But, good basketball coming up. Definitely some good basketball. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, that was the sports for the day. To end the episode on a good note, I think the past couple of days there have been many things that have happened that are, worth having a conversation about, worth addressing, and worth, being open-minded and worth listening. One of which happened in the league. I think we had, I'm very well aware of the comment that was made by Myers Leonard in a stream. And I think I've always been an advocate of someone who says, the words that you use are very important, and are very powerful. And I think I've heard a lot of players speak on it, but Julian Edelman's response, I think, was very, very well thought out. And I think it hit a point that I really want to echo of the reason why that kind of language is more hurtful is because you didn't know, and I think the unawareness of things like that are what make them more dangerous and more divisive and easier to use, because you can easily use it as like, oh, I didn't know. And, in my honest opinion, I think he must have known what that word meant in context, because he did not use it contextually, not properly, I guess. He used it, in direction of somebody. So, I think we as people have to really understand that the way we speak to each other is important. We're all here. The sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me is great. But if we're being honest, what are we without communication and words, and language as people? How do we communicate without what's coming out of my mouth? So I think there should be an emphasis on the seriousness and the severity of the words we use, especially when they are hurtful to people, and as hard as it is to be mindful of that, I think we should be aware of our surroundings and the people around us and the way you feel, and just really wanted to bring that up, because I think that's something that, not that I think has gone kind of under the bridge, but, I think I heard Michael Rappaport speak about it a lot, and his visible frustration and anger with it, and I agree with him. I think if a different word was said, I think there would have been more uproar about it, 100%. I think there would have been a bigger turnaround for it, but the league is doing what it can, and I think that's what it should do. But I definitely want to just really echo that, the words you use are important. You really breed thought and action with the way that you speak and talk to other people, and sometimes that's not in favor of people around you, or people that don't look like you or don't think like you, and unfortunately it turns into people getting hurt, and to not stay on the seriousness of something, but to really kind of hammer home what's going on. We really have no room for Asian hate. What happened in Atlanta was an atrocity. We sat all pandemic watching what happened to George Floyd and watching the protests and the riots, and I think for me, I've definitely learned something, and I was able to take something away. But I think it's very apparent that, hate is going to exist wherever we are. It's going to live in whoever lets it live in them. And it's going to continue to grow, and it's going to continue to spread, and like, again, I'm pretty sure Edelman said it, hate is a virus, and it does spread, and it spreads whether you plan on spreading it or you don't. And again, as people, we really need to come together with other people. And like I said it already, people that don't look like you, people that don't agree with you, people that don't think like you, and stand up for them, and protect them and hear them, and respect them and make them feel included, and be inclusive, because we're all here for each other. And that's how all of this came to be, was cooperation, and realistically, we have history that is rooted in cooperation, obviously, but in a lot of things that are what we consider not okay and not acceptable anymore. And I think we're at a day and age where we're able to address that and learn from it and move on from it. But it takes you to want to do that first. So, going forward, I think we should just all continue to be an advocate for things that we are not aware of. You know what I mean? Things that you're not fully behind. I think it's okay to ask questions and to speak out and to, separate yourself from these things, because it's not okay. People lost their lives over just blatant hate, out of their heart. And that's not a way to live life. I think MLK said it like, I choose love because hate is too big of a burden to bear. And that's it right there. It is too big of a burden to bear. And it is very unfortunate that someone used that burden and decided to take people's lives with it and leave other people with burdens. Thoughts and prayers to everyone affected by that, because that is it is a very hollowing thing to hear and to be a part of, especially after the year we've had, so it's obvious that we still have work to do. It's obvious that we should continue to, build each other up and help each other and, make people feel included, because we need it. I need it. I need it from my friends and from people I don't know, the same way you need it. So I want to just kind of end it with that, really kind of hammering down the idea of like, there shouldn't be any room for hate here. You should really love people like they're your family, and I think you should care for people, and I think you should, go out of your way for people sometimes, because they will do it for you, whether you ask for it or not. And I think that's what really makes people important and special. So thank you for listening. We're at double digits. This is episode 10. We got some changes coming up. We got some new things coming up. Thank you for following us for this long, and like I said at the beginning, check out all of Primo's other podcasts that are up. We got, like I said, some new stuff coming out there. I hope you guys are enjoying the new setup, making ourselves at home. And I'll catch you guys next week. Thanks.